burglary, car theft, and bank robbery. These are the small-minded matters of inexperienced thieves. Going larger needs a very brave burglar. Today, I'll tell you about the folks who went above and beyond, stretching the limits of what may be pilfered to the absolute limit. Grab your loot bag and a balaclava, because we are going to investigate some of the largest items ever stolen. The USA's underwater heist. K-129, a Soviet submarine, was lost in 1968 for unexplained circumstances. 16,000 feet below the Pacific Ocean surface, 1,600 miles northwest of Hawaii. Russian technology at the time was unable to find or recover the warhead-laden debris, but their Cold War adversaries in the United States quickly learned of the submarine's fate. The Americans were not going to pass up the chance to get their hands on a Soviet submarine that was loaded with potentially important documents as well as intact nuclear weapons. To keep things quiet, they entrusted the case to the CIA rather than the Navy. The Hughes Glomar Explorer was built by the CIA in 1974 for an inflation-adjusted cost of $4 billion. However, the CIA's costly fishing excursion yielded a piece of the ship that contained nuclear torpedoes as well as the remains of some of the sailors. Some people just have a taste for the biggest loot, and I'm not just talking about youngsters swiping their parents' credit cards to pay for Fortnite upgrades. A fully laden oil ship was hijacked by Somali pirates in 2017. The ship, the RS-13, had opted to take a short-cut through the Socotra Gap in order to save time and fuel. After their ship was captured by local pirates, they quickly regretted taking the short way. Ransom talks quickly commenced, including both the crew and the ship's contents, in a situation reminiscent of a particular Tom Hanks film. They released the crew and later the ship without ransom. Despite being one of the biggest thefts of all time, the payout was nothing but deep water for the pirates. Some people are in the business of constructing bridges. Others set fire to them. In rare cases, some steal them. In 2012, two guys with little regard for history were arrested in China for stealing a 100-year-old bridge. Because it was bordered by construction sites and saw very little foot traffic, the bridge was an ideal target for stealing. One of the bridge's few regulars eventually happened to cross the bridge and discovered that it was vanished. An inquiry was launched, and the police were able to track down the culprits after an eyewitness claimed seeing them lingering near the bridge with a vehicle one night. The thieves confessed that they'd used 2 cranes and 2 trucks to pick up and move the 16 huge stone pieces that made up the bridge. I just wonder if the bridge was sat pretty in a billionaire's garden before the thieves were caught. Major Aryeh Yitzhaki was rebuilding a World War II Mustang fighter jet for the Israeli Air Force in the 1980s, somewhere in Tel Aviv, Israel. The jet was waiting to be transported to Israel's Air Force Museum at a reserve airport. After repairing it, Yitzhaki devised his own ideas for the vehicle. He flew the antique all the way to Sweden and illegally sold it for $331,000 on an otherwise ordinary day. The Israeli government ultimately found it out and recovered it 6 years later. At least this plain story has a happy ending. Yitzhaki, on the other hand, was a high flyer who ended himself in the earthly limits of a prison cell. Brick by brick blasphemy. Pious looting occurred in Christianity in 2008, when robbers stole a whole church. The sacred structure, which had existed in the village of Komarovo since 1809, was brick by brick removed. The theft went undiscovered at first since the church wasn't in use at the time and was in a remote part of town. Officials from the church had been considering resuming use of the structure, but their plans were thwarted right in front of their eyes. Of course, they could still meet every Sunday morning in the building's open-air foundations. Churches are targeted more frequently than you may imagine because religious symbols and building materials can be sold for a profit. I like to think it all comes down to foul play between rival churches, but you'll have to ask the Pope. For Buddhists at a temple in Tacoma, Washington, in 2015, enlightenment came as usual by letting go of material objects. Only, this particular type of enlightenment was much more literal than usual, as it involved the loss of a 3,000-pound, 12-foot-tall copper monastery bell. Police were baffled as to how thieves managed the theft due to the bell's enormous weight and size. The temple abbot speculated that the people who stole it wanted to make money with no consideration for the significance of it and how important it is in the presence of Buddhism. Indeed, bells are commonly used to signify the beginning of meditation, making them highly sacred to Buddhist monks. The thieves likely melted the bell down to sell the copper, or may have turned to the black market for a buyer. I doubt a pawnshop would accept a suspicious, 3,000-pound religious bell. It is never simple to steal a tree. But, as this confusing instance from 2012 shows, the elder the tree, the more difficult it is to steal. Poachers had to prepare and wait a long time to take one specific red cedar tree from Vancouver Island, right off the coast of southwestern Canada. The tree was a full 9 feet broad at the base when it was 800 years old, and the exceptional quality of its wood made it an unlucky target for poachers. Park rangers were perplexed to see the tree had been chopped down 80% of the way through on a regular stroll. Someone seems to have tried but failed to take the massive tree. Rangers engaged the services of specialists to carefully fell the tree, preventing it from toppling and crushing unlucky hikers, and allowing it to decay and nourish the forest. This, however, was all part of the thief's plan. They returned after the tree had been securely down and stole the entire thing. Speculation emerged as how the burglars were able to find the heavy-duty machinery to move the huge tree, but whatsoever they did, the tree was never seen again. United States versus one Tyrannosaurus bataar skeleton is a strange court case. The subject of the inquiry was a dinosaur that had been stolen. Eric Procopi, a Florida guy, began the process by transporting the fossilized skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus bataar from Mongolia to the United Kingdom, and then to the United States. He claimed the bones were from UK soil at customs. When Procopi arrived in the United States, he auctioned off the dinosaur for more than $1 million. However, when the Mongolian authorities learned of the dinosaur's actual origin, they blocked the auction. According to Mongolian law, fossils are culturally significant in Mongolia, and their removal without government authority is forbidden. As a result, Procopi was arrested on counts of conspiracy to smuggle illegal goods, possession of stolen property, and giving false statements. He went to jail for 3 months, and the skeleton went back to Mongolia. For something that's been dead for millions of years, the literal Tyrannosaurus bataar had quite the trip. An entire Boeing 727 was stolen right off the runway of Quatro de Fevereiro Airport in Luanda, Angola. It did not have clearance to fly, it did not communicate with air traffic control, and it has never been seen again. It just veered precariously onto the runway and took off, without any lights on. The FBI and the CIA searched the globe for years, and couldn't find so much as an in-flight peanut. 2 men were seen boarding the plane before it took off: American pilot and flight engineer Ben C. Padilla, and a mechanic from the Congo named John M. Mutantu. Neither of the men were even certified to fly a 727, but both had been helping to carry out renovations on the plane in 3 months prior. Padilla's sister has stated that she believes he was somehow coerced into stealing the plane and is now held against his will somewhere. Others have speculated, based on the fact that Padilla was previously found guilty of fraud, that the theft was a money-making scheme. The mystery to this day remains unsolved,